ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ. Satsang ji, welcome to another episode of Alcohol and Beyond. And before we proceed any further today, we're going to listen to our guest's journey, story, his testimony of his experience of addiction. So let's take a listen to our guest today and hear his story of his addiction.
Hi there, my name's Sonny Gill. I'm 37 years old and I live in Nottingham. I'd like to just take the opportunity just to first say thank you to the Seek Channel and Back In for giving me this opportunity to share my experience, strengthen my hope with addiction. So my intention is just to share my story and hopefully someone can take something out of it and the message of recovery can be shared. I was born in London. I'm the elder of two brothers, and I suppose looking back at things, my first experience with alcohol and drugs was coming into college. And growing up, you know, we've seen our elders, we've seen our family members, you know, growing up around alcohol was pretty much the norm. You know, you'd see it on an everyday occurrence. Go to parties, gatherings, it would always be revolved around alcohol, and growing up as a child, you know, it's most of the stuff that you see. When I started in college, I suppose that's when things really started to take effect. You know, not feeling adequate and not feeling part of something, and you know, fell into a bad crowd. Didn't spend much time with family, and you know, we started with smoking weed, and then you know, that became an everyday occurrence, and then started dealing in that, and you know, that we started to develop a set of friends and a group where we would rely on each other, and nothing else really mattered from there onwards. From there, I started to delve into drinking a lot more and combining the two, going out to parties and going out and about and getting into trouble. If I'm to share about the things that we got up to, a lot of it revolved around a lot of violence, and you know, it was in general just a lot of violence, and with no sense of direction in life apart from the group that we hung around with. It's difficult to recall feelings other than the feelings of despair, and you know, it was constantly after the buzz, a sense of going out, being better than everyone else, and you know, looking for trouble, and you know, back then you don't really think much of it. And you know, eventually, after mixing alcohol and weed, and eventually, you know, it started to really take off. And again, you know, you don't really, at that point in time, you don't really look at yourself and what's happening to yourself. You just, you know, you kind of go along with it as the rest of the people are, and you just kind of fall in with that society. I suppose I started, some would say probably later than others, but it was around about 16. I started at a later age. And in hindsight now, looking back at it, you know, the kind of addictive traits and the personalities are clear to me now. That when I'd done something, I didn't do it by halves. I really went for it, you know. And I always had to be the one who would, you know, be able to drink the most, the one who would be able to smoke the most, the one who would be able to, you know, sell the most. You know, you'd always put that pressure on you, because I suppose now looking back at it, you know, that was what gave me a sense of purpose. Family life was pretty non-existent. I'd start to hide a lot of stuff from my parents. It was naive of me to think that they wouldn't know, but they were busy working most of the time. And as through the college years progressed, you know, drinking and smoking was, drinking at that point wasn't an everyday occurrence, but smoking drugs, smoking weed was. There came a tipping point where I stopped with the weed and then started drinking quite heavily, like every other day. Again, as you know, as a teenager, you know, you don't really think much of it, and from that point, I'd say a few years later, we eventually got into mixing it, and that's when things really got bad. That's when we started using cocaine. Initially, the first time I tried it, it was, we were out at a wedding, and a friend of everyone else was doing it, and all I used to do then was I was just renowned for my drinking, because I was able to drink a lot, and he asked me to try a bit. It didn't really do anything for me, but because the group around me, they were quite well-to-do at that point, and you know, I kind of looked up to them, and as they introduced me to it, I kind of felt, you know, this is the next step on. Yeah, so initially it was given to me, and then started to buy it. But you know, it creeps up on you. You don't think you know, you might be doing it one weekend, and you know, you won't do it again for another couple of weekends or something. And before you know it, it's got you. It's really got its hooks into you, and then it becomes every weekend, and then you know, you can't go out without having it prepped and having everything ready. Otherwise, there's just no point in going out. And it got to a point where, I'll talk about it later, but it got to a point where I couldn't even function. I couldn't even wake up and brush my teeth without having to use. The depth of my using and drinking was severe. You know, when most people wanted to go home after a night out, I would be the one who'd want to stay up. I'd be the one who wants to stay around. I'd be the one who wants to carry the party on. And no one else would want to be around. A select few, but they couldn't. It's nothing to brag about, but they couldn't keep up. But back then, I thought that was something to be proud of. And the effect that it had on my family, I can't even begin to think about the effect that it had on my mum and dad and my brother. I can't even begin to think that deep down in their heart they know something's happening to their brother and son. They know that, but they can't find a way. They can't find a way of helping. Because growing up, we're taught if there's trauma and if there's problems in family, we don't share about that stuff. You just keep it to yourself and you get on with it. Don't let the neighbours find out. Don't let anyone else find out. Because that's more beastly than actually, you trying to find a way of recovering. So from a young age, you learn to kind of hide. You learn to hide a lot of stuff, and you become really well at putting things under the carpet. But what my parents must have seen and my extended family, and it's hurtful now, but during that time, you don't think about that. When you're in it, when you're in the madness, you don't think about any of that stuff. All you think about is me. That's all you think about. Where can I get my next fix from? Where are we going out? What am I planning? Who am I going to do over? What fights are we going to get into? There were times where, I'd have nowhere to go. I'd have all the drink and the drugs with me, and I'd have nowhere to go. And I'd spend nights in the graveyard because I'd have nowhere to go. And you don't think about the effect of your behaviours when you're using and drinking on others when you're in the madness. Because ultimately now, looking back at it, I was searching for a sense of being, a worthiness. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to give love. And we're not really taught. I don't know, and I'm not blaming anyone for it. I'm definitely not blaming anyone for it. It's just things really got a lot worse from there on. I lost my job. I had to apply for another job. Just dropped out of uni, and these are very, very kind of superficial things. But what was going on inside, I wasn't aware of because I was constantly suppressing everything. After a while of getting into a lot of trouble, and the tipping point from the first point of realizing something was wrong was, you'd spend all the money that you have. Your health is taking a bit of a kick. You've lost your job, and still, you're still in part denial that there's nothing wrong with me. It's just because everyone else is doing it. It just seems the right thing to do. Everyone else is doing it, and I met this girl, and she was studying in London, and she lives in Derby, and it was but in recovery now we call it doing a geographic. Just I jumped at the prospect of getting out of London. I jumped at the prospect because I knew deep down somewhere, but I was too afraid to admit it, that what I'm doing is not right. What I'm doing is killing me. It's affecting all the relationships around me, and I need to do something. You know, I'm still fortunate in a sense because we've got a few family members who have gone through the process and still are in the process of recovery, and they're helping others. And you know, it was brought to my attention a few times in using that, you know, something maybe you should, you know, think about looking at yourself here. You know, do you think you've got a problem? But I spent so much in denial that these people, when they were clean, all I kept saying to myself was, you know, you're just kind of telling me to be clean because you live a boring life clean. You know, those are what my thoughts were. Then I'm the one who's having all the fun. I'm going out. I'm getting all the excitement and fun, and you know, I wasn't ready. I just wasn't ready to look at myself, and things hadn't got bad enough for me. So eventually got married and moved to Nottingham, and my addiction got a hell of a lot worse. The point on where things shifted was at the point my partner had enough and I was kicked out. I had to reach those points. I was bankrupt in every possible way. From there, I jumped on a train and I went back to London. Every week I had to travel back by the train for an admission check-in in Nottingham in a rehab centre. That was hard. That was hard because I'd be right around the corner from my broke marriage, and I'd stay there for a couple of hours and then go back to London. Eventually, through that program, we get the options to go to meetings and, you know, meet with like-minded people whose intention is to be well. And at that point, one of those meetings, I remember the first meeting I went to was where we went into a back-in meeting on, I think it was a Tuesday evening, where I met Brother Sohan and a few other guys who just, I remember walking into this place and just a sense of unity that I had never experienced in my life. A sense of actually, this is home. You know, this is where we become well. And there was a power in that room when I went in that is pretty indescribable. That was my first point where I felt being connected to something without having used any drug, any drink, any cigarette, nothing intoxicating whatsoever. And that was where, for me personally, that was where the door opened for recovery for me. hope what I shared today, forgive me if it's not come out the way I kind of intended to, but I really hope that today someone has connected with what I've had to say. And if you do need help, there is help out there. If you can get in touch with the Seek channel, you can get in touch with Back In. There is a lot of ways you can get help. You've just got to be open and just, do not be afraid of anything. There is a lot of help out there.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Satsang Ji, that was our guest today, Sunny Gill. Welcome to the Seek channel, Sunny.
Thank you.
Very good of you to be here and very brave of you to be here. You spoke quite openly and honestly in your testimony, and the viewers at home, I'm sure, will appreciate your honesty. You took some extreme measures to deal with the pain and misery that you went through. Could you just elaborate a little bit and how those emotions took over you?
Sure. Thank you. Using and drinking got to such a point where dealing with life was, it was pretty much impossible without having to have my drug or drink arranged. Just, even before I'd get up and brush my teeth, I'd have to get to using gear.
Yeah.
I'd go out and fetch it, and that was my coping strategy, and it was a very poor coping strategy, but that's all I knew. It's just a devilish perpetual cycle that I didn't want to feel the pain and misery from the night before and my wrongdoings, so the next day I'd pick up and do it all again to numb the feelings from the night before, and before I know it, I could be up for days and days without sleep.
It's almost like a vicious cycle, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And you just don't know how to break from it. So you're at your wit's end on, haven't got the bravery and the courage to face it. So the only other thing is to suppress it, and I can't deal with suppressing it because I hate the person I'm becoming. So for me, that only kind of left one option, and that was to kind of end it all. I wrote a letter out to all my loved ones, and I wrote how much they meant to me and how much I was scared of not being able to deal with life, and I tried to end it. And I overdosed, and it was close.
Satsang Ji, if any of you have similarities to Sunny and are struggling at home with an addiction, whether it's alcohol, drug addiction, or any form of addiction, then please contact the Seek channel. The telephone numbers are at the bottom. Anyone wants to contact the Seek channel, they can put you in touch with the right services, and you can get help. You don't have to do this alone. You don't need to suffer in silence. Also, families who have got loved ones who are struggling, please contact the channel and they will direct you to the right services and get you help that you so desperately need. Sunny, it's fabulous to have you here and speak of your journey. Surely there must be some, in the last 2 years, some key achievements for you.
Yeah, well, this is one.
Yeah.
Sitting here right now, being able to share my story. Just hoping that someone can connect and hear my story. That just to be given this opportunity, that's an amazing achievement.
Thank you, Sunny. Before we proceed any further, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back after this short break. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome back to the second part of Alcohol and Beyond. Sunny, you spoke of your days at college and how from alcohol you progressed on to the harder drugs.
Yeah.
And you had to break that circle of friends, really, you know, to achieve any sort of sobriety or clean time.
Well, yeah, I mean, the only thing that the only way I distanced myself from that was, you know, I left London to move. But because I didn't actually face I didn't really face the situation. It was only a matter of time before I made a new set of associates and friends.
Which we do. We managed to find those kind of people, don't we?
Yeah, and, you know, even then I still didn't learn because it wasn't bad enough for me. At the point of having heart palpitations, like, you know, you just felt your heart was going to stop. You knew something very, very bad was going on. And you know, the attempt at ending it all and coughing blood, you know, the severity of the health impact, it's just, you can't put it into words.
There must have obviously been a lot of fear around that when the doctors told you how severe how bad you were getting. How did you feel when the doctors told you how serious your condition was?
To be honest, I think I was still in a certain amount of denial, thinking it won't be me. You know, I'll get away with it. I'm Superman. It's okay. But that fear only added to the fear which my body was riddled with anyway. I was afraid of everything and anything. Paranoia kicked in. It's really hard to put into words, but it's you know, the point that a human has to go to write something down and to overdose, to end it all. You know, I really sympathise with anyone who's been there.
Well, Sonny, you said that you've moved from London to Nottingham, so that's quite a distance away from where you were born and where you grew up. What was the turning point? Was that a turning point for you? You obviously hadn't hit rock bottom when you came to Nottingham.
No.
You still had more of your journey to go before you hit rock bottom. What was the turning point for you?
You know, if it was left to me to make the decision, I was incapable of doing that. I was incapable of even getting up and, you know, getting dressed with any accord or brushing my teeth even. And, you know, if it wasn't for my wife, who'd put up with everything, put up with all of my behaviours, all of my actions, all of my lying, cheating, stealing, she eventually had enough. And if it wasn't for her kicking me out, I don't know where you know what, I'd be dead now. I would be dead now.
Well, I can empathise with that because I put my wife through a lot of pain and misery as well, and I'm only sat here today, I think, because of her sometimes. But the impact we have on our extended families, especially our parents, siblings, even grandparents, how did that impact on your parents and your brother?
Well, as I was going back, as I was kicked out? Or?
Yeah, and even when you was in your addiction,
yeah, when I was
you were you lied to your parents, tried to hide it, you're very deceitful, very manipulating.
When I was in my addiction, you know, being the physical distance between my family and I meant I could hide things even more from them. And you know, when they would call to see how I am, you know, I'd always feed them a pack of lies because I've been used to doing that all my life. And the odd occasion that they would want to come up and see me, you know, I think once they came up and they surprised us that I came up, and I'd got into a fight in town, and my face was pretty much completely rearranged. And when my mum and dad, they came in, and my wife opened the door, and then they saw the state of my face. And you know, for any mother or any father to see their son unrecognisable, having no weight on them, you know, black and blue all over.
Was it to that point apparent that something's not right here?
Yeah. Then, you know, there was no denying it.
But how did your family deal with that? Because I know a lot of Sikh families, Punjabi families, even further than that, Asian families, their coping mechanism with that, knowing that their son or daughter is a drug addict, an alcoholic, it's very hard for them to accept. So they'll try and hide it. How did your parents deal with that?
Well, thankfully, Mum and Dad were really open to asking for help, and you know, I mentioned earlier that, you know, some of my family members have been through addiction and are in recovery now, and so they handled it well. They handled it pretty well, and if it wasn't for their support, if it wasn't in their support in helping me find recovery, then I don't know how things would be. I don't know how things would be, but we went to the local GP, and registered with themselves, explained the situation, and that's when the ball got rolling for recovery. Yeah.
You spoke of your wife, and we're all aware of the amount of pain and misery we do put our partners through. I would like to know, was your wife aware of your problems with addiction before you got married?
No. As I mentioned earlier, you know, we became a master at deception and lying, and you know, hiding the truth. And no, she didn't. You know, the odd occasion we'd go out. You know, we'd go out on the weekends. You know, together as a group, and I would just. It would be seen the norm because, you know, for Sikh men, it just, well, the culture we were brought up with. The more you can drink, the more of a man you are.
Yeah.
You know, and it couldn't be further from the truth.
But wasn't there occasions when you were drinking far too much than normal? Wasn't the alarm bells ringing for her?
There probably was, but again, you know, if your life is still, you know, if you can fool yourself enough to say you've still got a job, you're still earning an income, you know, you're still relatively healthy, but you're still, you know, you might be drinking very, very heavily and using, you're still you're still in that denial, you know, and until it gets to a stage, no one will really know.
Satsangaji, we're going to listen to Inspector Keene and see what he has to say once again about alcohol and drug addiction.
My name's Richard Keene. I'm a police officer with Derbyshire Constabulary, currently based at Derby West. I've been in the police service for 22 years now. I'm also the vice chair of the BPA, which is the Black Police Association.
How would you say a drunk person, what does the impact does he have on the community as a whole?
People who are heavily under the influence of alcohol, people who are drunk, for want of a better word, have a massive impact not only on their own health and well-being, but on those members of the public. They're much more prone to cause crime and antisocial behaviour. Other people find it intimidating and puts people off. It makes certain areas feel unsafe. It makes people not want to go out. It makes people not want to socialise. It makes the streets seem unsafe. And it's clearly something that, as a local police inspector, that I want to focus on. People should not have to be intimidated by people who are under the influence of alcohol and drunk. And unfortunately, it's something we do have to deal with a lot, whether it be people coming in and out of the town centre for the nighttime economy, people coming out of local pubs, or even people who choose to drink on the streets and cause antisocial behaviour to residents and the community and businesses at large.
What do you suggest for any ordinary member of the community who sees a drunk person? How would you say to them? How would you deal with that if he was being approached by someone drunk and disorderly? What would your advice be?
Drunk people affect a large proportion of the community. I don't think they always realise what their actions are doing and how they're perceived and how unsafe they make people feel in their own homes and on their own streets. My advice to a member of the community who came across somebody who was drunk and intimidating would be not to tackle them. It would be to phone the police so that the police can deal with the matter. We can come out and hopefully rectify the situation. I wouldn't want people to approach people who are clearly under the influence of alcohol, could be unpredictable, could be violent. And yes, we do get a lot of calls for service. Yes, it does eat into our resources. But yes, that is one of the reasons why the police are here, to help people who have to be subject of this unacceptable behaviour on the streets.
Having police officers who are Sikhs, does that help you deal with their issues? If you come across a Sikh who is alcoholically unaware of what he's doing, drunk and disorderly, does it help you be a bit more culturally empathic towards them?
As a police service, we do look to reflect the communities we serve. We do ideally want to reflect all the communities we serve, so including the Sikh community. So we would like to have a similar percentage of police officers in the police service to the members of the Sikh community whom we police. One of the main reasons for that is that it builds up trust within the community. It means that people from within their own communities can theoretically understand the problems that their own communities face, and it basically gives them an emotional intelligence to tackle the issues that people from their own culture face. That's not to say that a police officer from a different culture couldn't deal with that situation, but I do think from both sides it does help to break down barriers and understand that the police force is representative of all the communities we police.
Welcome back. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. A big thank you to Inspector Keene and his views on alcohol and drug addiction and the police's experiences through that. Sunny, as you're well aware, drug addiction and alcohol addiction, we do get involved with the police, and it's not always a pleasant experience. You must have had a few run-ins with the police. You obviously, you talked of the violence, some of the scraps you got into. So, what was your involvement with the police?
Yeah, we're really quite familiar with dealing with police. Spent a lot of time in cells, and the fights were like every other day occurrences, and I lost my license. I used to drink drive everywhere, and it seemed like the more I could drink and have some sort of control of the vehicle,
that's almost a buzz as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it was just bizarre.
Yeah.
Looking back at it now, obviously I got caught and I lost my license over it. Thank God that I never hurt anyone.
But how did that impact on your functioning with your wife and the family?
Well,
travelling, this must have been when you was in London.
This was when I was in London, and so travelling was obviously tougher to rely on people. And even then, still, the grip of addiction is that strong that losing your license was still a bit of a joke. It was, I can still get around. It's no big deal.
But did it deter you from getting your alcohol and your drugs? Did it make it harder for you? Did it ever make you think, well, I can't get it, so I won't have it?
No, it didn't really, because there's always someone or someplace you can go, or someone who can come to you. So that didn't really make any difference.
I know from my experience, I was always willing to go that extra mile. Didn't matter how I got it, but I'd get it.
Yeah.
But if we put that much effort into our recovery, then we could have got better a lot sooner.
Yeah, it's true.
But yeah, so life has taken a big turning for you today. To be sat here with myself and the Sikh channel is a gift in itself. Can you speak of the other gifts in your life today?
Wow. Yeah, you just touched on that. It's an achievement and a gift in itself to be sat here and to be able to have your message heard. The fact, from the claws of addiction and the depths of death, and I'm sitting here now and I'm clean.
Is probably the biggest gift.
Cannot put it into words. I cannot put it into words that someone who is in my position, and I'm thinking I would never be able to live my life without any intoxicating substance in me and be happy. I never thought that would be me, but that is me today.
Well done.
And I just want everyone to know that can be there for them as well.
It is possible.
It is possible.
And you should be proud of that, Sonny. Sasangaji, we're going to listen to Bhai Amardeep Singh and see what he has to say again on what Gurbani teaches us about intoxicants.
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਗੁਰੂ ਅਮਰਦਾਸ ਜੀ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਜੀਵਨ ਦਾ ਤੌਰ ਤਰੀਕਾ ਬਖਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ। ਕੀ ਖਾਣਾ, ਕੀ ਪਹਿਨਣਾ ਤੇ ਕੀ ਪੀਣਾ। ਗੁਰੂ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਫਰਮਾਉਂਦੇ ਹਨ ਨਸ਼ੇ ਕਈ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਨੇ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਨਸ਼ਿਆਂ ਦੀ, ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਵੀ ਨਸ਼ਾ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਹਾਨੀਕਾਰਕ ਹੈ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਰੀਰ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਤੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਜੀਵਨ ਵਾਸਤੇ। ਨਸ਼ਾ ਨਾ ਕਿ ਇਨਸਾਨ ਨੂੰ ਬਰਬਾਦ ਕਰਦਾ, ਕਿੰਨੀਆਂ ਪੀੜ੍ਹੀਆਂ ਤੇ ਜਨਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਨੂੰ ਬਰਬਾਦ ਕਰ ਦਿੰਦਾ। ਸੋ ਗੁਰੂ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ is teaching us, revealing us the truth, what to prohibit in our life. Keep away from the intoxicants, which is one of the deadly sin in the code of conduct for the Khalsa. Guru Amardas Ji Maharaj gives us this beautiful shabad. Manas bharya aanaya, manas bharya aaye. That a human being comes into this world full of wine of ego, greed, anger. Because of those bad karmas, person's character is absolutely twisted. ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਜਨਮਾਂ ਦੇ ਮਾੜੇ ਕਰਮ ਕੀਤੇ ਆ, ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਬੰਦਾ ਮਾਨ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ, ਲਾਲਚ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ, ਮੋਹ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਭਰਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਮਨੁੱਖਾ ਜਨਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਉਂਦਾ। ਤੇ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪੁਰਾਣੇ ਕਰਮ ਮਾੜੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਇਹ ਜਨਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆ ਕੇ ਵੀ ਮਾੜੇ ਕਰਮ ਕਰਦਾ। ਜਿਤ ਪੀਤੇ ਮਤ ਦੂਰ ਹੋਏ, ਬਰਲ ਪਵੈ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਏ। ਫਿਰ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਜਨਮਾਂ ਦੇ ਕਰਮ ਮਾੜੇ, ਫਿਰ ਇੱਥੇ ਆ ਕੇ ਇਨਸਾਨ ਸ਼ਰਾਬ ਪੀਂਦਾ, ਨਸ਼ੇ ਕਰਦਾ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਮਾੜੇ ਕਰਮਾਂ ਕਰਕੇ ਜੀਵਨ 'ਚ ਇੰਨਾ ਦੁੱਖ ਹੁੰਦਾ, ਕਈ ਵਾਰੀ ਦੁੱਖ ਨੂੰ ਲੁਕਾਉਣ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਬੰਦਾ ਸ਼ਰਾਬ ਪੀ ਲੈਂਦਾ। ਮਾਏ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰੋ ਵੀ ਆਪਣੇ ਮਾੜੇ ਕਰਮਾਂ ਦਾ ਨਾਸ਼ ਕਰੋ, ਤੇ ਉਹ ਕਰਮ ਨਾਸ਼ ਤਾਂ ਹੋਣਗੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੁਰੂ ਦੀ ਸ਼ਰਨ ਚਾਹਾਂਗੇ। ਸੋ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਫਰਮਾਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਜਿਤ ਪੀਤੇ ਮਤ ਦੂਰ ਹੋਏ। ਉਹ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਚੀਜ਼ ਪੀਣ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਨਹੀਂ ਜਿਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਡੀ ਮੱਤ ਮਾਰੀ ਜਾਏ। ਬਰਲ ਪਵੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਏ, ਤੇ ਬੰਦਾ ਬਰਲ ਭਾਵ ਬਕਵਾਸ ਕਰਦਾ। ਹੁਣ ਸ਼ਰਾਬ ਪੀ ਕੇ ਨਸ਼ੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਕਿੰਨੇ ਲੋਕ ਪਰਿਵਾਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੰਨੀ ਬਹਿਸ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ, ਪਰਿਵਾਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਨਾਸ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਨੇ। ਸੋ ਮੈਨੀ ਫੈਮਲੀਜ਼ ਆਰ ਡਿਸਟਰੋਇਡ ਬਿਕੋਜ਼ ਆਫ ਦੀ intoxicants, because of the drugs. So Guru Maharaj is saying don't do that. Apna paraya na pachhani, khasmo takke khaye. Because when people get drunk, they cannot recognize difference between their own and the others. Their understanding is lost and they end up committing sin. ਸ਼ਰਾਬਾਂ ਪੀ ਕੇ ਨਸ਼ੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਬੰਦੇ ਨੂੰ ਪਛਾਣ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਕਿ ਆਪਣਾ ਮੇਰਾ ਕੌਣ ਆ ਤੇ ਪਰਾਇਆ ਕੌਣ ਆ, ਤੇ ਉਹ ਪਾਪ ਕਰ ਬੈਠਦਾ। ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਐਸਾ ਕੰਮ ਨਾ ਕਰਿਓ ਭਾਈ। ਜਿਤ ਪੀਤੇ ਖਸਮ ਵਿਸਰੈ, ਦਰਗਹਿ ਮਿਲੇ ਸਜਾਏ। ਉਹ ਚੀਜ਼ ਕਦੇ ਵੀ ਨਾ ਪੀਓ, ਕਦੇ ਵੀ ਨਸ਼ਾ ਨਾ ਕਰੋ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨਸ਼ੇ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਪਰਮਾਤਮਾ ਭੁੱਲ ਜਾਏ। ਸੋ ਡੂ ਨਾਟ ਯੂਜ਼ ਇੰਟੌਕਸੀਕੈਂਟਸ ਔਰ ਡਰੱਗਸ। ਬਾਈ ਯੂਜ਼ਿੰਗ them you forget your creator. ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome back, and once again I hope you all appreciated what Bhai Amardeep Singh Ji had to say. Sunny, what would you say to the brothers and sisters and even the parents who have children, loved ones in addiction? What would your message be to them? And what would you advise them to do if you feel you can advise anyone?
For the people, for the people or the persons living with the addict or alcoholic, you know, there is no shame in talking about the problems that go on at home, because once those problems are shared, only then will things move forward. There is help. I'm proof of that. There is help out there. In our culture, it seems, you know, not to kind of share if the son or whoever is kind of drinking or using, and just keep things within the walls. So, you know, and you know, 10, 20, 30 years go down the line, the son is still living in the house. The parents are still feeding them the habit, you know, not wanting to kick them out or anything. But the guys, they're just killing themselves.
But do you ever feel a sense of guilt? Do you feel remorseful towards your family? Some of what you put them through?
You know, in early recovery, you do, of course, it goes through your head, thinking, you know, how much hurt and pain I caused them. It's not intentional when you're there, because you're so selfish in your own act. You never think about other people. But initially, yeah, I was riddled with guilt, thinking, you know, what kind of son am I? What kind of husband am I? You know, and my God, what my wife must have gone through, you know, to see someone that she thought she could spend the rest of her life with, and to see him killing himself.
It's unimaginable. But I think the most important thing for us is not to beat ourselves up today about that.
Of course.
Because that can lead you back to...
Yeah.
So it's important that you're doing really well. Sonny, I know you work really hard on your recovery now. What do you do on a daily basis to maintain your recovery?
I'm glad you asked me that question, because, you know, I focus a lot on that. Most mornings, and I'll try to make a discipline of it, because I worked really hard at my addiction, and I'm going to work twice as hard at my recovery. I wake up in the mornings and I'll do my meditations. I'll do my prayers, and I'll start off the day with gratitude. Gratitude that I can actually, I'm clean here today. I practice my exercise disciplines, my nutritional choices. Most importantly, though, you know, the honest living from here, you know, and the acceptance of I am who I am, you know, and I don't have to run anymore. You know, I'm comfortable in my own skin, and I was always running from that person, and I'm not running from that person anymore, because I've started to love myself and others around me. And, you know, we talk a lot about connecting to spirit, and, you know, having these religious teachings about a higher power of sorts. And, you know, I found that the spirit kind of derives within. And I was never ever in touch with this side of things, but I tell you, no drug or no drink or drug can ever touch when you are in touch with your Atma. You know, it's indescribable.
No. What's your connection with Waheguru like, with Sikhi, your faith?
You know, for me, you know, we're taught we are beings that continuously learn. We practice such, not in only little things, in every little aspect of life. We practice such, no matter how painful you think it might be. When the word God or Waheguru or Sikhi was ever mentioned, you know, no idea, no concept of it. But now, you know, the sense that you never walk alone, you know, you're always backed, your path is always guided. And for me, that's my Waheguru. My strength I get is from that.
You said acceptance, and accepting the truth today is important as well, and accepting the fact that you're an addict and you will always be an addict. For some is a very harsh truth, but you're accepting that with Waheguru's grace.
Of course.
Waheguru will support you with that.
Of course, and he has done so far, and that's why I'm sitting here today.
And you're living a wonderful life. Thank you, Sonny.
Thank you.
Satsangaji, thank you for all the viewers who are watching this at home, and I sincerely hope that you've all taken something from Sonny's story, and we thank Sonny for being with us today and thank him for his honesty. And can I just say that if any of you are suffering at home and you want to tell your life story as well, you want to tell us what you've been going through, and or even the families, if you want to come onto the Alcohol and Beyond program and tell us your story, then please contact the Seek channel and come forward, because you will also be helping someone save their life, save a loved one. And Satsangaji, please ring the numbers below if you need help. The Seek channel, we're all here to support you. So whatever your needs, if you want to be signposted to a service provider, we can do that. We can guide you through everything you need to get back onto a healthy life again. And we look forward to seeing you again next week on Alcohol and Beyond. ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।